Number 30, Steve Jobs. Since the standard biopic approach to the life of Steve Jobs was already taken by the terrible Ashton Kutcher version, the makers of this film had to devise something a little more creative or risk being called cheap imitators, so enlisting an Oscar-winning director and an Oscar-winning screenwriter was a good start, and assembling an A-list cast definitely didn't hurt. The result is a truly original structure for a film, focusing on the moments leading up to three of Steve Jobs' biggest product announcements. The action unfolds in real time, heightening the sense of urgency, and the settings tell us as much about the current mindset of the protagonist as any line of dialogue. Creatively shot using progressively advanced cameras to indicate the passage of time and the rapid improvement of technology, the actors had to learn as many as 15 pages of dialogue to accommodate the lengthy tracking shots, made harder by the rapid-fire delivery and theatrically worded script of Aaron Sorkin. Essentially an acting showcase for Michael Fassbender, the actor delivers and nominations are sure to pour in. The rest of the cast gives solid performances as expected. In particular, Seth Rogen stands out, trading in his funny man persona and showing that he has some dramatic acting chops. It's pretty obvious Oscar bait, but it's well executed and deserving of recognition. Fans of The Social Network or The Newsroom will surely gravitate to this, but if you're not either one of those, it wouldn't be a mistake to watch this. Number 29, Avengers Age of Ultron. The Avengers was the big payoff to a lengthy build-up, and not everyone believed it could be done. So when it actually did hit theaters and fans finally got to see all of these characters on screen together, it set the world on fire. Literally in the movie and figuratively at the box office. So this film faced an uphill battle, as the novelty of seeing all the Avengers in one place was gone. They accounted for this by breaking out one of the comic book's premier villains and getting a great actor to voice the character. James Spader is perfectly cast and gives one of the best voice performances that I can recall. The plot to this film is very similar to its predecessor, among other things, but this time the action spectacle quotient is raised to monumental heights. The unwieldy cast is strong for the most part, even though they're fighting for screen time as hard as they're fighting to save the Earth. This film, though darker than any previous MCU release, has some of its funniest jokes and best camaraderie. Overall, I think I still like the first Avengers film better, but this is still a great time at the cinema. Number 28, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. The topic of Tom Cruise's insane stunt work on this film has been well covered, so I'll just say that you can believe the hype and be done with it. Something that deserves more attention in this film is the performance of Rebecca Ferguson. A lot of talk about how she's able to keep up with Cruise has been tossed around, but she's doing more than just keeping up. In many ways, she's the better part of this film. Certainly the more compelling character of the two, and she backs that up with some great acting. We know what Ethan Hunt is all about, saving the world and always requiring a motorcycle to do it. But with Ferguson's Ilsa Faust, we see a three-dimensional character who's having to make tough choices to stay alive, and keeps finding herself in a web of lies from which she can never seem to extricate herself. Faust repeatedly bests Hunt, including with a motorcycle, and saves his skin more than once. But while I'm praising this incredible female character, it should be noted that sadly, she's the only woman in the film with a name, let alone a character arc. Also worth noting is the excellent direction by Christopher McQuarrie. Action scenes range from drawn-out tension reminiscent of the famous scene from the first film to nearly Michael Bay levels of destruction and mayhem. McQuarrie also retains the comedic energy introduced into the series by Brad Bird. Gender representation issues aside, this is really one of the best action films in recent memory. See it if you haven't already. Number 27, Crimson Peak. The horror genre owes a lot to Guillermo del Toro. One of the most inventive and innovative directors to ever try to scare us, he's constantly finding new ways to do just that. Here, for example, he jettisons the tired horror trope of the slow build to the ghost, demon, monster reveal, and shows it in the first 5 minutes. And though it could be considered a twist ending, this film sets up a conclusion that doesn't happen, and substitutes something else that feels completely natural. There's a great quote from Peter Sellers: "People in comedies don't know they're in comedies," and that applies to horror as well. If we don't see the hopes and dreams that the characters have for their future, we're not as invested in their well-being. So if they spend the whole movie waiting for something scary to happen, and never try to live their lives, why would I feel bad for them, even if their lives are derailed by vengeful spirits? This film handles that well, as the first half of the film feels like a setup to a pretty good drama about manipulation and betrayal. Being a Del Toro film, this of course has some of the most beautiful set designs and backgrounds, plus some great costume designs, and the use of color in this film is a masterclass in conveying meaning and emotion simply. The performances are top-notch, especially Jessica Chastain, playing completely against type as one of the most sinister characters in film this year. A welcome reprieve from the tiresome repetition of contemporary horror. Number 26, Paddington. Having respect for what you put on screen is the first and most important step when adapting a beloved character. And in the UK, there are few children's characters more beloved than Paddington, so the filmmakers took great care in bringing the lovable little bear to life. The visual effects artist created a very realistic model for the movement and texture of Paddington's fur, The director and cinematographer conceived a unique visual style that lent itself to including a 3-foot-tall character among adult humans, and the screenwriters evenly distributed the comedy between verbal and visual jokes and didn't rely on any one character to handle the humor. In short, no one said, "It's just a kids' movie. All that matters is giving them something cute to look at." No. They took it seriously and respected that this is an important part of many people's childhoods. I really can't say enough about the quality of the sight gags in this film because I so appreciate it when full advantage is taken of the medium. Ranging from a bathtub descending a spiral staircase to the simple placement of some taxidermied animals, each one is well thought out and well executed. The acting is delightful from all parties, but Nicole Kidman shines brightest as something that can only be described as a cross between Cruella de Vil and Charlton Heston's character from Alaska. And if you think I'm not going to mention Ben Whishaw again, you are sorely mistaken. His voice work as Paddington is perfect, which is even more impressive since the film was shot without him and with another voice actor in mind. Truly great entertainment for anyone of any age. I highly recommend it. Number 25, The Night Before. What says holiday cheer more than copious amounts of psychotropic drugs and alcohol? According to this movie, nothing. This film is in the same vein as other stoner comedies like Pineapple Express and This Is the End, so if this particular brand of humor doesn't appeal to you, I can understand your reticence at giving this a chance. There are a lot of the typical genre tropes in play here, and a great deal of jokes that have been made before and even done better. But the things that work just work. I don't know if there's an actor working today who's more fun to watch in full panic mode than Seth Rogen, and Anthony Mackie takes his standard dramatic style and morphs it into a ridiculous faux straight man performance that's unlike anything you've seen in a recent comedy. But of the three leads, the essential ingredient is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's proven himself a capable comedian in the past few years, and plenty of that shows here, but he comes through magnificently as the film's emotional center, carrying more dramatic weight than almost any actor has been asked to do in this type of film. We're reminded at every turn why these characters continue on their quest for Yuletide merriment when faced with the most dire circumstances possible, because of his commitment to the drama presented. This all adds up to a satisfying holiday film, but the X factor that puts this into the category of must-watch cinema is the appearance of Michael Shannon, whose character and performance warrant seeing enough that I won't say anything about it. Not for everyone, but perfect for the experienced R-rated comedy fan. Number 24, Slow West. Westerns are a popular film genre because the idea of venturing into the unknown and trying to survive in such hostile territory makes a good metaphor for overcoming internal struggle, and the simplicity of the road trip format only enhances these elements. But where many westerns romanticize and idealize an antiquated notion of masculinity, this film plays with these concepts brilliantly by giving primary focus to Cody Smith McPhee's meek and naive Irish immigrant, and placing the more traditional hero type played by Michael Fassbender in the role of the caretaker. This dynamic is also used in the John Wayne classic True Grit, but whereas that film found the strength and resourcefulness in the character thought to be unqualified for frontier life, Slow West allows the journey to reveal the character's deep ineptitude in increasingly embarrassing fashion. And as his reliance on the stronger character grows, that character's shortcomings are brought to bear, and the grueling trudge toward imagined glory becomes a farce as it's slowly revealed that the reasons behind it are less concrete than they originally appear to be. This is punctuated in one of the most intentionally on-the-nose metaphors possible that had me in stitches. Presented as a drama and very successful on that front, this is really quite darkly comedic, and should be the subject of much discussion about what the meaning behind it all truly is. A genuinely beautiful film in spite of its minimal budget, with some great performances from the aforementioned leads. An intellectual western, if ever there was one, worth watching if you're willing to put on your thinking cap. Number 23, Straight Outta Compton. I'm probably the wrong person to review this movie because prior to seeing it, I knew nothing about NWA. I couldn't have named a single member of the group beside Ice Cube or Dr. Dre, and I didn't know of any significant event in the group's history. But that did allow me to see this film as a crash course in one of the most culturally important movements in music, and as something of a mini biopic of the people involved. And in those respects, this is really good. The music perfectly underscores the drama as it unfolds, thanks to the personal and honest songwriting of NWA, and important historical events such as the Rodney King beating and the ensuing riots are given social context and new perspective, which grounds the film in a harsh reality that music biopics tend to gloss over in favor of the lights and fame. The insight into the songwriting process and ins and outs of the music business also work well, regardless of your enjoyment of the music itself, but this is also just a well-made film. The script is free of pointless fan service, save for a few nods to some obvious events. The cinematography is intense and vibrant, the editing is near perfection, and director F. Gary Gray proves vital to this movie's success. Given the cast of mostly unknowns, the acting is solid throughout due to his direction. This film would seem to have limited appeal, but the box office numbers say otherwise. If you weren't sure at first, this might be worth a second look. Number 22, The Martian. Ridley Scott's last few projects have been really disappointing to say the least. Failing to gain any critical support and outright bombing at the box office, it seemed as though the director of Alien and Blade Runner had simply lost his mojo. With all that negativity surrounding his work, and given his age, Scott could have called it quits and retired without raising much of a fuss. But the 78-year-old instead chose to take on an even more ambitious project, a movie about space based on a novel that contains almost no action and is mostly composed of scientific and engineering jargon. Calling this a gamble would be putting it lightly, but in order to win big, you have to bet big, and this bet paid off big time. The done-to-death survival story takes on a whole new identity that dwarfs even the superb achievements of Gravity a few years ago, but the drama is perfectly counterbalanced by a very funny script. The visual effects are incredible, making the harsh surface of Mars and the void of space feel as real as any location on Earth. The lack of action is addressed by slowing the pace and letting the tension build, so that when the action does happen, the weight of it all comes tumbling down and the audience feels the height of the stakes. This film is helped greatly by one of the most impressive ensemble casts of the year, some of whom are cast against type to brilliant effect. But the showstopper here is Matt Damon. It's a rare talent to be able to carry such a large film, mostly by oneself, but Damon handles it with ease, and his charm and charisma help guide the viewer through the technical dialogue that ran the risk of becoming tedious but is instead believable and engaging. A late career success for a celebrated director who seemed to be past his prime. See it if you haven't already. If you have, see it again. Number 21, Dope. Growing up in a poor neighborhood is difficult. This is the thesis of an entire genre of films from the late 80s and early 90s, and the main target for the send-up: don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. So why would anyone try to make a movie like that in this day and age? Answer: because they have an idea as good as this. Rather than trying to distance itself from its inspirations, Dope embraces the similarities, going so far as to make its protagonists themselves imitators and fans of the style and musical tastes of the era that brought the subgenre into existence. And for the first half of the film, it seems as if this is going to be a direct remake of something we saw 20 years ago. But then it takes a turn into a carefully crafted examination of internet culture and the possibilities created by technology, covering everything from memes to Bitcoin, and in a clever bit of cross-promotion, being the first film to allow online ticket purchases to be made using Bitcoin. Dope shows just how much times may have changed, but the fact remains that life for people in impoverished neighborhoods is still difficult. Most of the earlier entries in the genre follow a character who has fallen into a life of crime, trying to overcome their circumstances. This film finds the Harvard-bound Malcolm forced into the drug trade and utilizing his intellect to not only survive, but find success in a business that a self-described geek like himself should have nothing to do with. This movie touches on so many social and racial issues that have been discussed in the past, but as it points out, have not been solved. One particularly poignant scene finds Malcolm forced to confront the danger of the life of a drug dealer. This moment is not triumphant or life-affirming. It's terrifying and eye-opening, and Starship McMore deserves untold praise. This is a thought-provoking film that rewards all those who are willing to ponder all the implications of what's presented.